Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Steve Anderson with Workamper News, and I want to thank you for joining us for this afternoon presentation. This is going to be just a little different than one of our standard Dreamer Journey presentations. Many of you that are with us are participating in the Dreamer's Journey program that Workamper News produces, and we've invited a number of other folks who are not involved in the program to join us for this presentation on what we are calling Building the Best You. And we are excited to do this, and I'm excited because I, after now a number of years, have seen how the things that we're going to talk about in this presentation today will have a major impact on your life, just as they have on mine. So would like to jump into it, but we need to do a little bit of housekeeping first of all. And every one of you should have a little toolbar that is part of the GoToWebinar program that you opened up. And on there, you'll see a little hand figure. And today I'm going to be asking you a few questions, and what I simply would like you to do in response to those questions is I'll ask them in a way that you can raise your hand as a response to the question, is for you to simply raise that hand by clicking that little hand on your control panel. So let's do a little test. Everybody that finds that hand, when you click that hand and it pops up, I can see that you're finding it, and that, all right, the hands are popping up all over the place. So that is awesome. That is great. Okay. Your hands are going to disappear because I'm going to drop your hands down for us. So thank you. And I've got some folks saying they are not hearing me well. Let's do this. Let's just use that. If you're hearing me okay, raise your hand if you would, please. And that'll tell me, okay, I got hands popping up all over the place. So chances are, Veronica, you're having some issues with audio on your end, because it seems to be functioning okay for the majority of the folks. So hopefully you can get that resolved and things will go well. All right, let's jump into this. Let's get my mouse running here. And as I mentioned, we are doing this as part of the Dreamer's Journey. And the Dreamer's Journey is a program that I started. It's actually been about 13, 14 weeks ago now. We've gone through one 12-week cycle, and we are into the second week. And my passion behind this program is to provide you some helping hands in order to step forward and to be able to move into that dream of traveling this great country, and to be able to do it in an RV so that you can travel where you want to, when you want to, and be able to stay as long as you would like to. To me, that's freedom, okay? And that's what we're going to be talking about today, is understanding some of the psychology that's necessary in order to step into that dream, to be able to actually travel the United States and Canada, or up into Alaska, or wherever you want to go. All right, so let's see here. We can get the slides. Here we go. All right. I want to start out by asking you a couple of questions, and pretty simple questions, I think. Let's say over the next 2 weeks, is there something you could do that would make your life better? Raise of hands. Is there something you could do over the next 2 weeks that would make your life better? All right, got lots of hands popping up. Okay. All right, so that's a phenomenal thing when you think about that. Over the next 2 weeks, something that can make your life better. All right, I'm going to drop everybody's hands for you. Second question, over the next 2 weeks, is there something that you could do that literally would make your life worse? Raise of hands. Over the next 2 weeks, is there something you could do that would make your life worse? All right, well, okay, I got lots of hands that time also. Thank you for your honesty and your forwardness there. I appreciate that. What you just did is you made a statement, and whether you realized it or not, by me asking you those two questions, you were making a statement of choice. And you have no one else that was bending your ear. You didn't hopefully have anybody else saying, oh, answer it this way. No, you got to answer it that way, etc. You didn't have a script that you were reading, etc. That was your response to those two questions. And you chose how to answer those questions. And you chose that, yes, you could do something over the next 2 weeks to make things better, or you could do something to make them worse. Well, one of the things that we're going to be talking about as we talk of building the best you on this journey is that you don't have to be great at this to get started, but you've got to get started, okay? It's necessary that you do something. And if we can get the slides to function, and I want to start by telling you just a little story. Story's about a guy by the name of John Jones. John Jones is a business guy, and he's at an airport, and many of you can relate to this story that I'm going to talk about. And he's at this airport, and he's walking down the concourse, and he goes by one of these shops, you know, that has all of the wonderful things they want you to buy, you know, the sodas to the t-shirts to you name it. And he sees one of those old-time weight machines that's sitting there right next to the doorway of this little shop. And it's the type that you probably have also experienced, where you get on it, and not only will it tell you your weight, but it'll give you a little strip of paper that has your fortune on it, okay? Some of you picturing this probably had that experience at one time or another. All right, so John Jones walks up. He says, I've got a little time to kill here. So he steps on the scale, puts his coin in, the coin drops, and out pops the little fortune. And he lifts it up and takes a look, and it says, and right on the fortune, it says, your name is John Jones. You weigh 188 pounds, and you're taking the 220 to Boston. Wouldn't you be a little surprised? That thing came out of this machine that he had just happened to walk by, and it knows his name, and it knows his weight, because that's what it was for. But how in the world would it know he was taking the 220 to Boston? So he goes, you know, he gets a little suspicious, as we all were. He looks around looking for hidden cameras. Is this candid camera? What is this, you know? So he steps off, turns around, comes back and says, I'm going to give this another try. That was just a fluky thing. Steps on, puts another coin in, and out pops the fortune strip, and it says, your name is still John Jones, and you still weigh 188 pounds, and you are taking the 220 to Boston. He is really going nuts now. He said, this isn't right. There's something going on here, and I can't figure it out. So he's got his clothes with him, so he goes in the restroom. He literally changes all of his clothing so he looks completely different. He comes back out, he gets on the scale, and he steps on that scale, puts the coin in, and out pops the fortune, and it says, you are still John Jones, and you still weigh 188 pounds, but you just missed the 220 to Boston. Oh my gosh, he's really going nuts now. All right, so the reason for the story is this. You know, we have so many distractions in our lives that cause us to literally miss out on a lot of the important things. Truly, truly important things. John got distracted by the craziness of what was ever going on with that scale. Well, in our lives, we have right now everything from COVID-19 to you name it going on in our lives. And what happens is we get so distracted from the good things that we literally either have in our lives and we're not giving appreciation for, or that we're focusing on and wanting to see happen in our future. So our goal during this time is to work on building that understanding that there are certain things that we need to do on a regular basis in order to create our happiness. Now, I want to introduce you, if you don't know Zig Ziglar, this is a gentleman I want you to get to know. Now, Zig is no longer with us. He's now in heaven. He has passed, and he's no longer with us, but I've gotten to know his son, Tom, who is the CEO of the Ziglar Corporation, very well. But long before Tom came along, I was introduced to Zig Ziglar by a professor in graduate school at Drake University years ago, way back in the early 80s when I was going to college there. And this gentleman, or this professor, introduced me to this book. It's called See You at the Top. And Zig wrote, this was one of his first books. He wrote many, many books through his career, and has been recognized as having a major impact on well over 250 million Americans through his career, which is a pretty phenomenal thing. But in his book, he literally shared with us how there are certain steps that we need to take to develop success. And so a little homework for you. If this is one you don't have in your library that you haven't read, I'm going to encourage you to check it out. And in this initial book, this was one of the original copies. That's why it's kind of yellowed a little bit, because I've had this for a long time. I'm going to hold this up and you can kind of see that. That was the illustration they had in the book of the Stairway to Success. And folks, I'm not talking about here trying to become a millionaire or anything like that. I'm not selling you that concept whatsoever. I want to share with you that these premises that we're going to talk about pertain to developing that lifestyle to be able to travel where I want, when I want, and stay as long as I want, as well as not just about everything else in life. Okay? All right, so here's the Stairway to Success. You'll notice that it's got a set of steps. There's an elevator, and then at the top of the steps, you've got of what we desire for tomorrow, what we hope to see for our future. And this picture here helps you understand, first of all, that there's no shortcuts. There are steps that we have to take in order to get to where we want to be in the future. So we first of all have to understand that we need to understand ourselves. We've got to be before we can do, before we can have. Some simple words. And one of the things now, after many, many years, and some of you that are on this presentation today may not know me very well. I have been around the work camping world now for a number of years. And I have had the opportunity and the blessing to be able to get to know thousands of work campers through the years. I had the blessing to be able to actually hire work campers at Adventureland Amusement Park I was the HR director there for 15 years. We built a very large program and a very successful program. And I'm telling you that because the things that I'm going to share with you in this Stairway to Success and the foundational elements, as well as the different steps that are necessary in order to get to that top step of tomorrow, I have seen those capitalized in many, many thousands of people that were living literally the dream to be able to experience life in a way they never ever thought they would be able to be able to travel where they wanted to be able to spend as much time there as they wanted to be able to get in an RV and experience this great country. Okay? All right, so we're going to begin by looking at this picture a little bit. And one of the things that I want you to see is that there's foundational words there. See at the bottom of the steps? Faith, love, loyalty, character, honesty, and integrity. These are the foundational elements that all of us need to have in order to have that tomorrow that's going to be happy and healthy, prosperous for us, provide you security, allow you to have friends, more friends than you maybe ever thought you would have, to be able to have peace of mind, to have an enjoyable experience with your family, and to have a family that loves you and that you love, and to have hope for tomorrow. So faith, love, loyalty, character, honesty, integrity, these are what we classify as foundational elements. If I can get my screens to move forward here, I'm having a little trouble. Oh, well, I got a little ahead of myself, to be very honest with you. All right, so they're foundational elements, but they're foundational elements because every one of us needs to have those in order to get to that top step. And you'll notice from our illustration here that the elevator's out of order because so many of us today, we want the shortcut. We want it now and we want it to happen fast. It's, sad to say it's part of our culture that we have now. We are very impatient when it comes to things for ourselves and for our future, etc. But in this illustration, the elevator's out of order. That means you're not going to have a fast track to the top. You're going to have to step up those steps. And part of that process is developing that strong foundation. Now, many of you have done this through your life. You've developed that strong foundation. You've developed that character. You've developed the honesty. You've developed a strong loyalty. You've got integrity. You're able to love, and you're able to have and maintain faith. Folks, these are the foundational elements that, just like a tall building, like we're showing you here in the picture, the taller the building, the deeper the foundation. So the greater that you want to go up these steps of success, the stronger those elements of character and honesty and loyalty, etc., need to be. I've had people tell me in the past that these things are old school. They don't pertain anymore. We don't see a lot of these things taking place in our society, especially in the media, etc. And I'm here to disagree. Character is still very important. Honesty, our own honesty. First of all, being honest to ourselves and to others. Whether others are out there, whether the media is, whatever, we're not going to get into all of those politics. We're talking about ourselves here, okay? So these are foundational keys to growing our potential success. All right, I want to look at each one of these steps real quick. The first one is a big one, and that is self-image. Now, self-image is a little bit, it's some people have a hard time describing this, but I want to use something that's kind of common. You've all seen balloons before. You know, balloons have a shape to them, they have colors, they have a texture. In this case, they've got cords tied to them, and you'll notice the balloons are actually floating. Well, what is it about the balloons that literally makes them have the ability to rise up? It's not the look, it's not the texture, etc. It's what's inside. In this case, it's helium that's inside these balloons that are allowing them to rise. And just like us, it's not what you do, it's who you are that determines your self-image. So many of us get so wrapped up in our careers, in our labels that we give ourselves, that becomes basically our self-image. And what we need to understand is that's just not the case. That's not really who we are. That's simply what we do. Because we've got to recognize that we have potential as individuals. And the story here, to help you understand this, is that if we don't take the time to reflect upon ourselves inside, then we really kind of forget about the things that we have accomplished, and sometimes our self-image can diminish. And you know, I've had people who have asked me that, do you really believe the things that you share? And yes, I do, because I really believe that our past has built who we are, and that we have had some pretty phenomenal experiences and we've had some successes, but a lot of times we trample ourselves down, and we've got to realize and take a little bit of literally a time to list it out, to write it out, different successes that you've had in your lifetime. Because we allow ourselves to get beat down too much by what's going on in today, and we forget about the successes that we had yesterday. Because those are important. Those are key. That victory list is, first of all, it was produced by us, and we need to use some adult language as we make that list out, such as, I did a phenomenal presentation yesterday, or I had the most exciting experience when I did this, or using language that can inspire you with your own self-talk. And you say, well, I don't talk to myself. Oh, yes, you do. All of us do. And sadly, a lot of us talk to ourselves by beating ourselves up. And we're going to talk more today about how we use words to help and hinder ourselves, but by using 4-letter words, and I don't mean some of the ones that maybe your mind went right to when I put that up there on the screen. That's not what I meant at all. I want you to start using in your self-talk some 4-letter words that will bolster you, that will lift you up. Words like hope, words like love, words like to be kind, those types of words. Because when we do that, we are raising ourselves. We are lifting ourselves. We are lifting that self-image that maybe has gotten trampled a little bit. is lower than it should be, and it's literally being raised up by ourselves, folks. This is a project that we need to be working on. We can't rely on someone else to be doing it for us. We've got to be doing it ourselves. Well, one of the things that you've got to be very aware of is, what are you putting into your mind from other people? Because the self-talk is important, but if you do not use it and capitalize on it and use that adult language and use those four-letter words that we just talked about, then what happens is you have other input that's coming in, and boy, there's a lot of it coming in over the media right now during this COVID-19 agenda. I encourage you to enroll in what is called, and Zig called it this, Automobile University. And Automobile University is nothing more than when you've got that radio on in the car, and anymore we've got the technology, have a book from Audible on your phone and tie that into your system in your car and listen to that book while you're traveling, instead of listening to the news, listening to all the banter about all the different, well, he said, she said, they're wrong, I'm right, etc. Work on developing yourself. And you can do that through Automobile University. Now, Zig had a ton of different statements that he made through his career. And there are some of them that are my absolute favorites. But this is one of the ones on top of the list. You are where you are and what you are because of what's gone into your mind. Now think about that for a second. We've had a lot of stuff, especially over the past few weeks, go into our minds. And especially if we spend a lot of time in front of that television listening to all of the agenda. Well, I'm here to say, and Zig shared with this, you can change what you are, and you can change where you are by changing what goes into your mind. If you're spending hours a day in front of that TV, cut it back to just 7 minutes a day. Watch a little bit of news just to know what's going on in the world, but you do not need all of that agenda being pumped into your mind. You can change where you are and what you are by changing what goes in your mind. And you can do that by utilizing something like Automobile University. You know, it's not, this isn't hard stuff. It truly, truly isn't. But a lot of people have told me, well, I've tried that stuff before and it just doesn't work for me. And my simple comeback to that is, well, then try it again. You were at a certain place in your life at that point in time. You're at a different place now. Let's try it again. Let's enroll in Automobile University again, because you're going to have to take some risks to stretch yourself, to gain the confidence to be able to get behind the wheel of an RV, strike out from your comfort of home that you've known, and to reach out to experience the highways and the byways and to experience this country. If you're wanting to do that, there's going to be some risks. You're going to have to stretch yourself a little bit. Some of the things that you will do are a little scary. And I can tell you, I've done this. I remember that day when Kathy Jo and I got in the motorhome, and we had sold the sticks and bricks. The motorhome was our home. And I remember telling Kathy, this is a little scary, thinking that this is it. This is our home. This is it. We don't have a home to come back to. This is our home. And there's some thinking and some psychology that had to develop and mature in order to develop comfort. One of the things that we spend quite a bit of time on in the dreamer's journey is helping you understanding the mechanics and the psychology of that, and developing all the things and getting them in place, like your domicile and all the key elements, so that that fear factor is not as great on that day when you get behind the wheel and head down the road and have that same conversation either in your mind or with your partner. This is home on these wheels as we travel down the road, because we're going to have some failures. We had some failures. You're going to have obstacles that come up. And one of the things that, if I can get nothing else across to you today during this presentation, is that failure is an event, folks. It's not a person. Now let that sink in for a second. It's an event. It's something that takes place. The motor home breaks down. That's one of the things that those of you that have been on the journey with me for a while, we've introduced you to Terry Cooper, the Texas RV professor, that will tell you motor homes are machines, RVs are machines, they're going to break down. it's going to fail. That doesn't mean I failed as a person, okay? That simply means there was a failure that took place of a piece of equipment, and that should not be the end of my experience as an RVer. I've literally heard stories where someone had a problem with the RV, the very first problem, and they say, okay, I can't deal with this. I'm out of this. I'm going to give up on this dream. I'm sorry. It was just an event. And as an individual, and as we go through this process of this dreamer's journey with you, we're helping you understand there's things you can do to lift and raise that confidence level to a degree that those little failures are not going to knock you down. They are simply things that we grow from and that we rise up from. And the more we learn, the more of those failures are eliminated. Not completely. I won't sit here and tell you you're going to eliminate all of them, but you're going to decrease a number of those failures. Okay? Because when we have the failures, yeah, they could chip away at our self-image. And we just need to understand they're just events, folks. They're not who we are. They're just things that are taking place in our lives. All right, self-image. It's a biggie. Second step is your relationships with others. And wow, this is a great one, because I've shared in the dreamer's journey, I've shared how one of the greatest things that you will experience as an RVer, as a work camper, if you get involved in work camping, are the relationships that you're going to develop while you're living out there on the road. I probably can be about 100% correct in this projection. You're going to develop stronger and closer relationships as an RVer and as a work camper than you ever did living in your sticks and bricks in the subdivision while you were working. And the reason being is life has changed for you. You're in a different state of mind, and you're connecting more with the folks that have like-mindedness. They're doing what you're doing, etc. And in essence, it's like it says here, life is an echo. What you send out comes back. When you share that passion and show what you're doing as an RVer, that comes back to you from other individuals, and it's easier. But one of the things I want you to understand is that we need to realize how we treat people. A lot of you are still working right now. So what kind of coworkers do you have? And you're thinking about them right now as I ask that question. What kind of coworkers do you have? What kind of parents do you or did you have? What kind of friends do you have right now? Because in our mind, we're thinking about answers to those questions. And you say, well, what do you mean by kind? How do you define those coworkers? How do you define the parents? How do you define the friends? Okay? Because all of those folks are key in the development of our relationships and how we view them and how we think about them and how we in the past have talked to them, etc. Because so many of us, what happens is in development of relationships or the destruction of relationships, we end up being naysayers. We end up causing separation and division. And as Zig used to put, he says, we need to become a good finder. He used to say that some people, it was almost like there was a reward for finding fault with things. And I think, wow, and that's so true. And I have been guilty. I won't sit here and tell you that I'm any prima donna, because I'm not. I am at work with this every day, just as I'm asking you to be. But we need to work to become a good finder. We need to be searching out things and not use this double standard that we tend to use. Excuse me just a second. We kind of have a double standard. We judge others by what we see from the outside, and we judge ourselves from the inside because we knew, well, that was our intent. We're able to think and understand, well, that was our intent. You don't always understand the intent of an individual, and if you're making a judgment call because of a look, because of a certain action, an appearance, whatever the case might be, you're messing up. Excuse me. All right, so developing relationships, key. Next thing, goals. few weeks ago, we actually talked about and went through a goal setting program. And I'm going to do just kind of a little synopsis of that as we jump into this. But you've got to have goals. It's like a roadmap. You've got to have a plan of action. If you don't have a plan of action, then you really aren't ever going to know if you ever got there or not. You know, you've got to have goals. And a lot of people say, oh, I've set them and I never ever made them work, etc. Well, then I'm telling you to try again. And maybe you need to take a few more steps and learn how to set goals, because there are some very specific things that you can do. Because if you don't have goals, you are what Zig called a wandering generality. You're living in the world of shoulda, woulda, coulda, versus having goals where you can become more of a meaningful specific. He also had this statement. He says, you know, if you don't have a target, if you don't have goals, you don't have a target to shoot for, you can hit it every time because you're basically shooting at nothing. So you need to be functioning and working towards developing goals. And as we talked during that presentation, astronauts, to become an astronaut, you had to have some major goals that you set from the very beginning. We talked about pro golfers. We talked about people that set goals to climb mountains, all of those types of things. They didn't get there just by wishing. They got there through the setting of goals at a very specific target in order to have that happen in their life. Now, what's cool about goals is they release power. They literally, they allow an energy to, and I'm not exactly sure how to put this into words, but they create an energy that allows us to focus and to bring that focus even tighter with a laser type pointing, to be able to get rid of all the fluff, the outside world stuff that just keeps coming in at us, and to be able to keep our focus on the prize. I want to be able to travel this great country, to do it with my RV and to go where I want, when I want, stay as long as I would like. That's freedom. But the only way I'm going to get there is to have the power of focus to be able to set the goals to make it happen. You know, it's not I won't say it's easy. If it was, everybody would be doing it. That's one of my favorite phrases that I like to share. That's what I tell people when we talk about building small businesses. If small business was easy to do, everybody would be doing it. It takes having a system that you learn how to use, and we teach through the Ziglar program, we teach folks how to actually go through a goal setting program in order to set those goals, how to learn how to set the criteria for action and then be accountable for the action, and then ultimately to see that goal come to fruition. We got to be very specific about the goals, because you're going to run into these, folks. You're going to run into obstacles. Guarantee it. Oh, it's going to happen. You're going to run into obstacles. I'll tell you a little story. This comes back into attitude also, which we'll hit on here a little bit. There was two work camper couples that were traveling together, and they were headed for the same location to work. And this was in the springtime, and they were traveling from the north, and they looked at the weather, had it all scoped out, felt that they were going to be safe to be able to make the trip. One of those crazy fronts came through from the west very quickly, and they were in this campground facility, they thought, just for the night. And the snow came in, was over a foot of snow, and they got snowed in. And these two couples had the desire to be moving the next day to that new opportunity, but wasn't going to happen because nobody was moving because there was so much snow. And one of the things that really came about was, you know, both of them were very strong-willed, both of them had their goals set, but one of them looked at the obstacle as, all right, I'm here. This is a campground operation that hires work campers. I'm going to take the time while I am stuck here, because that was the obstacle, and I'm going to learn more about their work camping program. The other work camper couple said, no way, I'm just staying put here. I have no interest in coming here. It snows here, etc. And they didn't do anything other than stay in their RV and grumble. Well, the other couple took the time to get to know the owners, the operators, met some of the work campers that were already there. And what they determined during that time, through this obstacle that was put in front of them, the snowstorm that kept them there, they determined that down the road, either the next year or the next year, that was going to be one of their desired locations to come and experience. So they learned through the obstacle. So we're going to run into things that are going to slow us down, all right? We're going to have obstacles. And just as Zig talked, one of his favorite stories that I remember the college professor in graduate school way back in the 80s sharing this story. Zig said you had to become like a flea trainer. I don't know if you understand much about fleas, and it's not one of the most common things that we see a lot of things, about, but a flea can jump very high. They're very small, almost hardly see them, and they can jump literally hundreds of times their height. And if you were to try and train fleas, I'm going to take a jar and I'm going to put some fleas in this jar. And if I don't restrain them because they can jump so high, they literally jump out of the jar, and next thing you know, they're gone. So I get the fleas, I put them in the jar, and I put a cap on that jar. And what happens is, now that I got the cap on there, the fleas keep jumping up and hitting the top of that lid. But over time, they get so they don't jump as high. And they stop jumping almost altogether. I've trained that flea not to do naturally what it could do, and that is to jump out of that jar. Sadly, what happens to us when obstacles come along, we are all excited about jumping out of that jar, getting into the lifestyle, but instead we start to become like the flea. We let those obstacles, our lid, start to slow us down, and pretty soon our enthusiasm for the lifestyle is waning. So we've got to understand that we have to be a flea trainer. We literally have to not limit ourselves by the obstacles. Don't let that be the lid that slows you down. All right, next rung on that step is attitude. Oh, wow, this is a biggie. Attitude has some very key points to it. And one of the things Zig talked about was you've got to do a checkup from the neck up once in a while. That's obviously thinking about what's going on in here, right? Because otherwise we're going to have what's classified as, or Zig would call it, the hardening of the attitudes, which is caused by this stinking thinking that we can all develop so much. I have had literally hundreds of people tell me through the years, this happens a lot at our event we have in October here at Rendezvous, who have told me that I didn't think I could ever live this lifestyle. I didn't think I could ever have that freedom. And I had so many of my family tell me, who do you think you are that you could do that? They were injecting things into this person's mind. And again, we've already talked about what are we allowing to come in. They were injecting this stinking thinking into them that was impacting their attitude to the point where they had the PLOM disease. Have you ever heard of that one? It's classified as the poor little old me disease. You've heard, I bet some of you have had that before. I have no doubt. It's rampant in our culture today. I can tell you that for sure. A positive attitude is going to put you heads and shoulders above someone who lives in this PLOM disease world. And if you will take the time, just simply think about things as that couple I just shared with you that got snowed in. The couple that stayed in their RV and all they did was complain, they were experiencing the plum disease. The couple that took the time to get to know people, to get out there and to experience the property, even though, yeah, it had snow all over it, they weren't experiencing the plum disease. They were taking the time to allow their attitude to grow and to expand and to think about the possibilities. Because what deposits that we place into our mind, whether they're negative or positive, are going to have everything to do with whether we take that next step up those steps to success. So what kind of deposits are you putting in? Are they negative or are they positive? And I've had so many people tell me, well, I can't even think about being positive in this negative world that we live in. Folks, I already told you earlier, it's a choice. We all have the choice of whether we're going to allow the negative stuff in or the positive stuff in. And whichever, you're the gatekeeper, so whichever one you allow to come in more than the other is going to have some major impact. Share this little story with you real quick. This is one I know you're all familiar with. Do you remember Sully, the airline pilot? It's a great movie out there about the experience that he had of landing that aircraft on the Hudson that day. This is a statement from Sully. One way of looking at this might be that for 42 years, I've been making regular deposits into this bank of experience, education, and training. And on January 15th, the balance was sufficient so that I could make a very large withdrawal. He had gone through all of the simulator training, all of the various safety training, all of the things, plus the hundreds of flight hours that he had under his belt, to the point where he had built up a strong positive bank account that allowed him to make that decision, almost split decision, to be able to put that aircraft down on that river and save all the lives on that airplane. We have that option, folks. We can either allow the positive in or the negative in. The goal is to make the choice of becoming a gatekeeper that will allow more of the positive in than the negative. The next one, some of you are going to go, oh, I don't really want to talk about this next one. It's called work. Now, I've had through the years and doing RV shows and talking to folks, I've had a lot of people tell me that work is a four-letter word. That's true, it is. But I'll also tell you that everything gets done by somebody working. And short story here a little bit about work. And this took place hundreds and hundreds of years ago. There was a king who was wanting all of his scribes and his folks, his wise men, to literally give him the wisdom of the ages when it came down to what work translated to and how it tied into the wisdom of the ages. And so he sent them off. He gave them a whole year to do this. And they came back with, this would have been long before printed books, with probably the scrolls, just like 20, just huge pile of all these scrolls. And they put it in front of the king and says, here is the wisdom of the ages. Well, the king says, that's phenomenal. That's great. You did that, but nobody's going to read all of this. Go back and reduce it to something that somebody will read. So they went away, came back in a few months, and they had one scroll. It's still one big scroll. And the king says, that's great, but I don't want to read it even. Nobody's going to read it. Go back and come up with something that someone will pay attention to, the wisdom of the ages. So they did, and they came back, and they stepped in front of the king, and they said, we have one sentence. There ain't no free lunch. And folks, that's really what it comes down to. There ain't no free lunch. You know, people, they want things just because they want them, but we have to take the steps. We have to grow in order to develop the confidence and the abilities to be able to experience this country in an RV, and to do it with confidence, and to do it with a level of security that we feel good about what we're going to do. It's going to take some work. It truly is. You know, Franklin said years ago, in the U.S. Constitution doesn't guarantee happiness, only the pursuit of it, right? Well, you've got to put in your pursuit. You've got to literally put the work in to make this happen. So if we'll go the extra mile, if we'll stretch things out. I was thinking about this as I was preparing for this presentation today. You know, I have a friend who's been very financial business world, very, very, very successful. And I asked this friend, I says, what was it that you did that allowed you to take advantage of all of the things that have come along in your life to be able to capitalize and be able to literally earn the income dollars that you have? Because he's a multimillionaire many times over. And he had one simple statement for him. He says, I looked for the problems and then I came up with answers for those problems. I was willing to go that extra mile, where most folks, they simply looked at the problem and didn't come up with answers. They only talked about the problem. They lived in the problem. They reveled in the problem. I realized the problem was the opportunity, and I came up with answers for the problem. And he says, you wouldn't believe the economics, the rewards for having answers to problems. Well, this is a favorite story that Zig used to share, and it really ties in well when we're talking about work. You've got to make deposits when it comes to working. These are the Chinese bamboo trees. Some of you have maybe grown bamboo. I know here in Arkansas, we can grow bamboo. Our climate works for it. The Chinese bamboo tree is something that we plant the seed, we water it, we nurture it, we provide fertilizers, etc. And so we plant it the first year, nothing happens. We continue that process for the second year and the third year. The fourth year, we water it, we fertilize it, nothing happens. And in the fifth year, it's not uncommon for that bamboo tree to literally grow 90 feet in 3 months. Now, so my question for you is this: did the bamboo tree grow 90 feet in just 3 months? Or did it take the whole 5 years? Through that process of the nurturing, through the process of the watering, the fertilizing, etc., we were literally nurturing that seed to grow and to blossom. And this process takes patience. It's the 3 Ps that Zig talks about in his book. It takes patience. So a lot of us don't have a lot of that anymore because of the world that we live in. It's so I want it now. It takes patience, it takes persistence, and it takes perspiration in order to move forward with our dreams and to be able to get to the top. Well, the very last step talks about something called desire. And desire, well, first of all, what is it? Let's think about what it is. I want to relate to a cup of tea. So this is a cup of tea. So you look at that cup of tea, and I don't know about you, but I like tea, but I like it to be very, very hot. And if it's at about 211 degrees, man, that makes a nice hot cup of tea. In fact, you got to be a little careful drinking it that you don't burn your tongue or your lips. And here's what's interesting about that. It makes a great cup of tea, but what happens if we add just 1 more degree? That fluid can turn to steam. It can turn to something that will create energy. And there's a story, in fact, talking with Tom Ziegler the other day, and he shared with me, he's quite the nerd when it comes to studying ancient history especially. And he was telling me he'd read a story about how the Greeks, and we're talking thousands of years ago, actually developed one of the first steam engines. But they had no ideas about how they could use that energy and how to capsulize it and be able to move it forward into something that could be beneficial to their society. And so in their case, they didn't have a strong desire to move forward with it because they just didn't know how. Well, in our case, what we're talking about here is we are showing you methodologies and steps that you need to take in order to live the lifestyle, to have the freedom to travel where you want, when you want, and stay as long as you want. But you've got to take the steps and develop the burning desire to move forward with it in order for it to become fruition. You have to have what we classify as intelligent ignorance. Now this is our good old buddy, the bumblebee. You know, you've heard this story before, but let's elaborate on it a little bit. You know, the scientists have told us that there's no way that a bumblebee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small for its body mass. It can't possibly flap those wings fast enough in order for it to fly. But no one ever told the bumblebee, I guess, or it didn't listen. Because what do bumblebees do? They fly. It's natural for it to fly. In our case, we develop dreams, the dream to travel in RV and experience America. We get that desire moving forward. We step up those steps, and we're at desire. We want to make this happen. And if we have developed the goals and we've developed the focus, we literally develop what's classified as intelligent ignorance. We don't allow anyone else to say, no, Mr. Bumblebee, you can't fly. You can. You can do this if you desire to do this. But it's going to take that intelligent ignorance to shut off a lot of that negative stuff that's going to come at you, because it's going to come at you even from your family members, folks, because they just don't understand. They don't have the desire. It's not their goal. And it's not that they're being mean. A lot of times it's they're being jealous, but they just don't see it. And they shouldn't. It's your goal. It's your desire. It's your dream to do this. Because it all comes back to you got to have goals. You've got to have those goals to set the focus. And if you want to experience the RV freedom and to be able to travel where you want, when you want, stay as long as you want, you've got to be willing to set the goals. Here's a tip that I encourage you to do if you haven't done this yet. Some of you understand what a vision board is, and if you do, that's great. Let me share with the others that don't. A vision board is nothing more than a bulletin board or a cork board or something maybe you have on your wall in your home. And what I want you to do is I want you to start finding pictures and start posting those pictures of places you would like to travel, a type of RV that you think you would like to own, things that you would like to do while you're visiting certain locations, etc. Want those pictures to start showing up on that vision board. And you say, well, why do I want to do that? Because when you have a vision board and you glance at it every day, that embeds in your mind and in your heart that this goal is something that's worthy of what I want to stay focused on and to move forward to do. Because sadly, what will happen is this. So many people will simply stare up those steps. They won't ever take the effort or make the effort to step up those steps. So my question for you is, will you be the one staring up the stairs, or will you step up those stairs? The whole idea is that it's your choice. You have a country that you live in that provides you with this freedom to be able to do this. You know, this isn't true in every country of the world by any means. We are blessed to live in a society that provides us the ability to either be the one that just stares up those stairs or steps up those stairs to their tomorrow. If you will do what Zig says here, if you discipline yourself to do the things you need to do when you need to do them, and the day will then come when you'll be able to do the things you want to do when you want to do them. So there's things that have to happen in order for you to take those steps to reach this experience to be able to travel America. And if you will do the things that we've talked about today, along with a lot of other elements that through the dreamer's journey that we will plug into things, into your mind as we go through this 12-week cycle on this, you will have a much better opportunity of having success to experience life as you would like to experience as an RVer. The whole purpose and the premise behind the dreamer's journey is for me to help you understand that you have the power within you to make this dream come to fruition. And I've heard too many people tell me I woulda, shoulda, coulda. And that comes because all they did was stare up those stairs instead of stepping up those stairs. So I'm going to encourage you to join us If you're not already with us, many of you on here today are already on the Dreamer's Journey with us, and that's phenomenal. I appreciate having you, and I'm glad you're with us, and I hope you stay with us for months to come. If you're not, I want you to check us out at www.rvdreamersjourney.com and get on board with us. Allow us to provide you inspiration that will help you take those steps, up those steps, so that you can have the tomorrow that you would like to have. Along with the journey, I'm also going to invite all of you to participate in our rendezvous event that's coming up in October. This is an event like none other. We only do one a year, and we do it right here in our little hometown of Heber Springs, Arkansas. I've had people say, well, do it somewhere else where you can have a lot more people. We can only have 225 people in the audience. But it keeps it at an intimate level of dreamers as well as experienced work campers who come together for that week of lots of different activities, lots of different things that we do. But the biggest thing is you are connecting with people of like mind. You're developing relationships. You will develop friendships that will be friends for the rest of your life when you come to Rendezvous. But above all, you're learning more about how to take those steps to success to create the happiness to be able to travel this great country and to be able to do it in that RV and go where you want, when you want, and stay as long as you want. Folks, that's freedom. That's what I love about what I do. We provide the opportunity to live their dreams, for people to live their dreams. And I don't take this lightly, because I've seen too many people who have not allowed themselves to experience what they could. And so I'm going to encourage you, if you haven't started getting focused, please do. Whether it be with the Dreamer's Journey or with other materials, whatever, just take the action today to do it, if you would. And then I know, and I realize I've gone on almost an hour, so thank you for allowing me to do that. But I hope we've provided you some information and some inspiration that will help you move towards reaching those goals that you have. So with that said, I'm going to sign off for today, and we look forward to seeing you down the road, as I know I will, as you travel this great country. Bye-bye. Thank you.